or, in case there's someone doesn't show up for a class, or someone comes late to another one, or, they'll be on YouTube. Or let's say someone signs up tonight to come next week, it'll be on YouTube. Okay, let me just get this ready. Or, yeah, right. Now I want to say, Peter, good job that you came. I always find that men have a much more difficult time.
I would not have come unless I knew that I was able to read Hebrew for my bar mitzvah, and I read it exceedingly well.
So you don't know how to read it?
No,
You did know?
No.
Yes.
Maybe November 20th.
So there was a lot of people I said, come to the Hebrew class, get it done, so you'll live the rest of your life knowing how to read Hebrew. There's no, I don't want to say there's no excuse, but it's definitely a good value to be able to read Hebrew. And this thing, okay, let's get started. That thing go on? Yes. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Sorry, Lily, I'll have the flashcards for you next week. They come overnight from Amazon. So, yes, you have the app?
Yeah.
Okay, the app is just as good as the flashcards. Now, the advantage of the app over the flashcard, well, the advantage of the flashcards is they're physical cards, which is an advantage. The advantage of the app is I can guarantee you'll walk out reading Hebrew if you can practice every day. If you can practice every day. And when I say practice every day, I mean for about 10 minutes. If you want, I can remind you with a text, but it's really that important. It's really that important to practice. We're doing bite-sized things every week for 5 weeks, so it's really not a lot. If you, Peter, I'm scared because it's all going to come back to you. You'll see. It's really that easy, yeah. But Hebrew is a very, very simple language. My kids are somewhat homeschooled, and I've taught many of my kids to read, and they learn the letters, they learn the sounds, and then we start reading, and I mean, every second word, third word is an exception in English. I mean, they read like what's TH, and then would, what about, where's the L, right? Every single word is an exception in English. English is a very difficult language. Hebrew and I know you're a linguist, yeah, right? Hebrew is actually a very simple language. It's extremely easy language. However, it has different rules than what we're used to. So, when we can accept those rules, we can learn Hebrew very easily. Now, Hebrew, as we'll see, is a very simple language, but nothing can replace muscle memory. So you can walk out and you can go through the class tonight in 5 minutes and be like, oh, this is so easy. Look, I got my special card here. I can use this card, one of the cards there. With this card, it says everything phonetically. I can read everything. But you're going to be reading very, very slow. In order to learn to read Hebrew, you need the muscle memory. So I think it's a good opportunity that we have. We're all here. We're going to see each other every week. We should all, try and, go through and practice every single day, or at least a few times a week. That way we can build our muscle memory. I've given this course several times, and you always have, the procrastinator, like, kind of personality, who at the end is like, can you read it? It's like, yeah, I can put it together. But the muscle memory you can't replace. So if you practice every day, you'll get it done. That's number one. And I'm going to keep saying, make sure you practice every day. I'm going to keep saying that because God willing, we'll practice every day and we'll get it done. Now, another thing when it comes to reading Hebrew is a lot of the books, I see people have different books of how to read Hebrew. And a lot of us have tried reading Hebrew. And there are all sorts of methods of how to do it. Now, in Judaism, we're talking about Kabbalah before, we have an ancient method of reading Hebrew, of teaching it. So we are going to teach with that ancient method because we feel it's very important. All the letters in the Hebrew alphabet are considered holy, and each one is like a body. So instead of just learning the sounds phonetically, we're going to learn the name of every letter and the name of every vowel. We're going to learn the names and memorize them and know them. And that's the way we're going to learn, because that's the traditional way. Now, Hebrew is an ancient language. Ancient languages are very unique in every word has like a lot of meaning. So even the names of the letters have meanings. A lot of the names have to do with names of angels, the names of vowels. And it's almost like, as we'll see, you got the letters are bodies, and then you put the vowel underneath. It's like the soul. It makes the body move. It makes a sound. So we're going to learn all the letters the first couple of weeks. And then we are going to learn the vowels. And then we're going to put them together and we're going to know how to read. It's actually pretty cool. Even the biggest skeptics who come here walked out knowing how to read. Is that the broken one? One of them is broken. I need to throw in the garbage. It just keeps mixing back, and every time I take it, put it on the side, and someone brings it back in. Okay. So now let's go, and we're going to start. Now, because it's boring to learn the letter, we're going to give a little bit of meaning. Each letter, we're going to give the letter, the name. We're going to give a really good mnemonic of the letter that you can see on the screen, and you're going to be like, okay, it's going to make you remember what that letter makes and the sound, the basic sound that letter makes. And then we're going to also give some mystical meaning. Each letter has a numerical value, has a shape, has all sorts of mystical meaning. We're going to give a little bit of mystical meaning because we're adults, and to force ourselves to memorize things can be very difficult, right? So when we hear a little bit of the meaning of the letter, the mystical meaning of the shape of the letter, it's going to stick with us. All right, let's get started. So here's the alphabet. You have a card like this. You guys also have a card like this, which has the name of every letter on it. But for now, we're going to go through this fast. We're not going to go through all the letters now. We're going to start, and we're going to learn one letter at a time. When you look at this, it's going to take us 3 weeks to learn the letters, 1 week to learn the vowels. And by then, fourth week, we'll basically know how to read. And then the fifth week, we're going to hit it home and fully know how to read. Any questions before we start? Yeah. Open those. Absolutely. Open those. Yeah. And yeah, follow along with your cards. After we finish each line, we're going to actually take a few minutes for everyone to review, say the letters. I know it sounds like babies, but we're going to say, like, repeat after me when you hear this letter, just so we all know it. Even if you know it already, it's helpful if we all repeat it together. So we're going to start with card number 3. If everyone wants to go open up their cards, card number 3. Yes, actually, I'm really happy that I see since last time we taught it, they put the magnet in it. Because like everyone's boxes would like kind of break by the end. So now they have it.
Is that what?
What?
Is that what?
No, that is coffee. You probably shouldn't drink wine before learning to read Hebrew. There are other things you can drink wine before and learn them well, but Hebrew is a tough one because it's very technical. All right, we're going to start with our first letter over here. Let's go through. We're going to start with our first letter. This is an aleph. Can everyone say aleph? Aleph. Okay, so aleph is like the no sound. If you just make a sound with your right? Aleph is silent. It has no sound of its own. That's what we're going to say. Now, the reason why we're saying aleph is silent is in English we have letters, which are vowels. In Hebrew, we got the letter, and then we put a vowel underneath, and that makes the sound of the letter, right? So aleph is just a blank sound. Aleph is silent. It makes a pure sound of the vowel. If you don't understand what that means, don't worry. In a couple weeks, you will. So the first letter is aleph. Now, I just want to show you a couple things. So aleph, that's how it's pronounced, and we're going to say our mnemonic. Aleph is silent. It has no sound of its own. So this is our first letter of the alphabet. It's the sound, right? It doesn't have any other life to it. Now, I want to note that aleph is a very, very special letter. It's the first in the alphabet. Aleph literally means like general, right? One God. But the actual build of the aleph has a very, very mystical story. So the first Chabad Rebbe, who was quite a mystic, had hired someone to teach his children the aleph base, how to read Hebrew, about 300 years ago. So you can imagine being chosen by this great rabbi to teach his kids aleph base, and his kids are very special kids. So he said, how do I teach them? He said, well, you start with the letters, and you explain the shapes of the letters. So what's aleph? This is what he says. Anyone here speak a little Yiddish? He said, "A Pintele von oben und a Pintele von unten, das ist an Aleph. And a Kav be'emtza, das ist an Aleph." Aleph is a point on top, so we got a point on top, a point on the bottom, and a line in the middle. And this is what he explained to teach his son. He said the point on top, a lot of times God is represented shape-wise as a point. Why? Because we can't really describe God in any way, right? The best way we can describe him is he's there, right? He's there. But how great is he? Well, we don't want to put any size to it because so a God is like a point to us. We can't really comprehend him. We know he's there, but how small is a point? How small is a little point? Well, it's infinitely small, right? If you make a little dot, infinitely small. So he said you have a pintele von, you have dot above, and a pintele von unten. What's the dot below? That is a Jewish person, right? A Jewish person below. And if a Jewish person wants to connect to God, he has to be humble. He has to be a pintele. He has to be just a dot. A dot doesn't have any strong shape or features to it. And then there's a kav be'emtza, a line in the middle. The line in the middle is Torah study and our faith. So through Torah study and our faith, that's how we connect us, the point below, to the point above, to God. So that is how he described Aleph. These are called sparks of light. These are called sparks of light. Now, I want to note something that we're not going to go into too much, but there's a lot of different types of writing the Aleph Bet. So these are some different forms of how you might see an Aleph, right? So these are some different forms. Actually, and you don't have to know this, but I'm just going to tell you, some of you guys are going to be familiar with different pronunciations, Ashkenazi, Sephardi, and we're going to do the easiest version here. It's a hybrid of the easiest version. And afterwards, you can grow in it. You can grow. So these are different forms you might see the Aleph. Here we got a standard one. This one's kind of more cursive maybe. This is actually a script that people write with their handwriting. This is how people write an Aleph with their handwriting. Isn't that interesting? Okay. Okay, so now we're going to go. That is letter number one. Aleph. Aleph is silent, and it just follows whatever sound the vowel underneath puts in it. All right, well, now we're going to go into the next one. The next one is actually a double letter. Now, another thing we're going to do here is when there are two letters which look the same, and there's several letters specifically that everyone confuses, and especially kids. We're going to call them out and we're going to say, this is the difference between them because you're going to get confused between them. So here we got the next letter. The next letter is Bet. Bet and Bet's twin is called Vet. So you got Bet and Vet. Everyone can say Bet, Vet. Okay, who could tell me the difference between them? Who could tell me a simpler difference? Okay. So Bet has a button. Bet has a button. That's our mnemonic. So Bet has a button. Vet is vacant, right? So Bet has a button. Vet is vacant. Okay, you got it? So these are our next two letters. Bet and Vet. Bet has a button and Vet is vacant, right? And you're going to see Bet is the B sound. Vet is a V sound. So Bet has a button and Vet is vacant. Now, it's important to note that these are two letters. We're going to introduce the letters on the left later. So letters on the right later. These are two letters that we confuse. Here's Bet and Vet, and here's another one. Now, who could tell me the difference between them?
The bottom, yeah.
So the difference is Bet has a balcony. Everyone see the balcony on the Bet? Everyone see it? Bet has a balcony. The other one does not have a balcony, right? So we've got Bet and Vet. Bet and Vet are twins. One of them has a button. Bet is a button and Vet is vacant. Bet also has a balcony. There's another letter that, not to confuse with that other letter we'll introduce later. The other letter has no balcony. Everyone sees the balcony, right? Okay. Now, what is our spark of light? So actually, Bet is very interesting. Bet is the first letter in the Torah. First letter of the Torah, the first word of the Torah is Bereshit. It means in the beginning. Bet is the first letter in the Torah. Now, Bet teaches us, a lot of us want to know where we came from, right? Where did the universe come from? And it's a mystery. So Bet shows us that if you can climb onto the balcony, but you can't really see so well. Bet is like the beginning. And the way we go is forward, right? We go forward. The Torah guides us to go forward. Our creation guides us to go forward. But it's very hard to understand things from before our creation. So that's see the Bet. That's why the arrow is going out from the Bet, right? Because from once God created the world, our direction we go is forward. We can't really understand so much of what was here before the world was created. All right, everyone followed so far? All right, now our next letter. This is our third letter. We're going to say it together. This is Gimel. Gimel. Everyone say Gimel. Gimel is the G sound. Now, Gimel is glamorous Gimel. And that's why Gimel has a high heel, right? Now, we are going to note that Gimel is going to be compared to a later letter that everyone confuses with them. The difference between them is Gimel is glamorous and has a high heel, and the other letter, which is similar, has no high heel. Everyone see how it doesn't have a high heel? Okay. Now that is a Nun. Yes, Nun does not have a high heel. And these are letters, I'm telling you, I'm saving you a lot of trouble. These are letters that everyone confuses. So glamorous Gimel has a high heel. And the other letter, I don't want to say it yet in case you don't know it. Okay. Now, Gimel is actually the numerical value of 3, right? 3. Now, something interesting about Gimel is Gimel, the word Gimel, 3, the word Gimel literally means to give, to donate. That's what Gimel means, to give, to be a giver, to donate. Now, Gimel is a donor, and he creates 3. There's the giver, the receiver, and then the Gimel unites them. By giving from the giver to the receiver, he brings this concept of unity between them. That's what Gimel is. And actually, Gimel kind of looks like a guy who's running to give, right? And this is the significance of glamorous Gimel. So glamorous Gimel has a high heel, right? And it's the G sound. Gimel also means to give, right? And he creates this concept of giving. Now, who does Gimel give to? Gimel gives to our next letter, Dalet. Everyone say Dalet. Okay. Now, Dalet actually, Dalet looks like a hammer and can dent things. Dalet is the D sound, right? So when we look at Dalet, we want to remember that it looks like a hammer and it can dent things. Yeah? Follow me so far? So Dalet makes a dent. Dalet is like a hammer and can dent things. Now, Dalet in Hebrew literally means poor. Who does Gimel give to? Gimel gives to Dalet. Dalet is poor. Now, if you look at the picture, so here, just don't miss this. This is really important. Dalet's like a hammer and can dent things, right? Now, it's notable, as we'll see, the top part of Dalet goes on both sides of the bottom part, right? There's another letter later on we're going to see is a little different. So now Dalet can dent, but Dalet also means poor. So Gimel gives to Dalet, but Dalet's a little bit ashamed to receive from Gimel. So Dalet is turning the other way. If we look at the alphabet, we got Gimel. Gomel means a giver. And we got Dalet is a poor man. He's hunched over and he's turned the other way, right? Dalet is dal, destitute. It's another mnemonic. Okay. Now, Dalet is to be confused with this other letter here, right? This other letter here. Note that Dalet is a hammer. It makes a dent, right? This other one is not a hammer. It won't be able to pull out nails, right? Because it has nothing in the back, right? So don't confuse. We got Dalet is a hammer, makes a dent, does sound. It goes all the way over the bottom line. This one here does not, right? It doesn't. Smooth on the back, right? So it'll be difficult to use as a hammer. The weight won't be well on it. All right, those are our first 4 letters. Now we're going to go on to number 5. Any questions so far? Okay. Now we're going to do our next one. This one, everybody, hey. Okay. So hey is like a breath of fresh air. It's the huh sound, right? But hey, his foot is broken. All right, everyone sees his foot is broken? So we got hey, his foot is broken. That's how we're going to remember hey. Hey, his foot is broken. And it's a huh sound. So hey, his foot is broken. Now, hey is there's actually multiple meanings of the physical shape of each letter. Multiple meanings. We're just sharing some of them today. So hey is like a breath of fresh air. Hey, his foot is broken. Now, hey actually has a gap in its broken foot. And that gap is meant to teach us that when we trust God, there's always a way out. There's always a way out. Never feel stuck. There's always a way out. And that is our lesson that we'll learn. These are our first 5 letters. So what we're going to do is let's just review our flashcards. If you take them, we'll start with the Aleph, and then you could just say Aleph, and go through them. We're going to take a couple minutes to do this because it's important to do it, and I'll come by and listen in. Yeah, so maybe do it even a few times, and you could do it together. You could do it together. It's fine. Do it together. All right, now does anyone remember the mnemonics of it yet? Who remembers the difference between bed and vet? Okay, bed has a button, vet is vacant. And also vet has a balcony, right? Okay, anyone? I'm gonna give a couple minutes for this because we'll start off the muscle memory. Peter, you know the easy ones. Any questions also,
All right, I would pay things.
That is true. So there is this Sephardic, not as far pronunciation. So for this course, they put them together and basically took all the easy options because just make it easier. But yeah, I also as a child learned Aleph, Beis, Beis. That's Ashkenazi. Sephardi is Aleph, Bet, Bet. Yeah, there are many examples. Here we're just going to do basically the simplest hybrid of it. All right, looks like everybody's ready. Anyone need? All right, so everyone got the letters clear? All right, that's the easy ones. Now we're going to move on to card 8. So card 8 is our next letter. So here we got Aleph. This is where our just review. Bet, Aleph is silent, right? It's got the yud on the bottom, on the top. Bet has a button. Vet is vacant. Glamorous, Gimel. Gimel is glamorous. Dalet is a hammer that makes a dent. Hey, his foot is broken. And now we're on to our next letter. This letter is called Vav. If everyone could say Vav. Now, Vav in Hebrew, actually, we'll talk about what it means in Hebrew. Vav is very straight, very thin. That is Vav. Very. Vav is very straight, very thin. That's how we're going to remember it. So Vav is just like a line going down. It's very thin, very straight. Vav in Hebrew actually means, the literal meaning is a hook. Vav is a hook. And actually Vav in Hebrew means, the meaning of the letter Vav in Hebrew means, anyone know? The meaning of the letter Vav is and. So for example, if I would say Cindy, Veramona, that's how I would add that letter Vav in between. It connects, the Vav connects. Just like a hook, right? A hook kind of holds up. And that's the meaning of Vav. That is our spark of light. So here, if we look at these hooks carefully, we'll see Vav, a hook joins two elements together. Vav is a prefix that links phrases and chapters and bespeaks general continuity. That's what Vav means. Vav means to draw forth. That's what it literally means. It literally means like a hook. It connects. And that is what Vav. So now look at this important graphic here. These things will help you remember it. So see the Vav hooks? Okay, that's a Vav. Now we're going to go on to our next letter. This is card 9. Yes. Vav is used as a prefix, and it means and. So it connects words. So that's why Vav means a hook. Vav. V-O-V. Yeah. All right, now I got our next one here. This one here is Zion. Zion. If everyone can say Zion. Now, Zion is zigzaggy, right? If you could look at Zion, it kind of goes one direction and another direction and another direction. So Zion is zigzaggy. Zion is the Z sound. Zion is zigzaggy. Now, Zion, actually in Hebrew, the literal translation of the word Zion is a weapon, weaponry, right? So Prescott are into Zion. People in Prescott are into Zions, right? People are into guns here. So Zion means a weapon, weaponry. So you see, that's what it literally means. And if it's kind of shaped like a sword, our mnemonic is going to be Zion, zigzaggy Zion. Now, Zion also has the numerical value of 7. 7. And 7 is actually the seventh day of the week. 7 is notably Shabbat. Now, Shabbat is actually probably one of the Jewish people's best secret weapons of survival. When you keep Shabbat, it brings you back home, your family, it brings you back home to yourself. You're not out there in the world fighting anymore, and you're taking a day to be inside. So that's why Zion, which means weapon, is connected to the number 7, which is connected to Shabbat, because Shabbat is like the Jewish people's survival's secret weapon. So Zion is zigzaggy Zion, okay? All right, now we're going to go on to our next letter, card 10. And I know this is kind of simple, but you'll see at the end, we're going to drive a bunch of mnemonics here, and we're all going to know how to read. Now we got our next word. Now our next word is hard for people to pronounce. It's chet. Chet. Now, I'll tell you a fun first came here. Chet is the g sound. Chet is the g sound. Now, Americans a lot of times have difficulty saying ch, right? Well, it's kind of like you got to get the sound in your throat. And that's where things like Hanukkah came. So when I first came here, I was at the square and there was an elderly guy there. I mean, he must have been about 90 years old. And I was walking by, like I always do. I had my tefillin and I said, "Are you Jewish?" And he said, "Yes." So I said, "Oh, would you like to put tefillin on?" He said, "Okay. Have you ever done it before?" "I've never done it before." 90 years old. He actually owned, there's a place nearby that has a lot of meetings for AA. I can't remember what it's called, but he owned it and he started it. So anyways, you know him? The Safe Harbor. Yeah. Mickey Barnes. Okay, so Mickey Strauss. His real name was Barnes Strauss, but Mickey. He actually used to come here. He was about 90 years old. He always had like younger wives that would come here with him. But so I put tefillin on him, and he was with another guy who was with him, who said, "By the way, I converted to another Christianity, but I'm actually also Jewish." "Okay, do you want to put tefillin on also?" "No problem." So we're putting tefillin on the second guy in the square here. And I have pictures of it. I mean, it was remarkable. Also his first time in his life. And while we're there, there's like a young guy who's walking by and he's kind of looking. I said, "Are you Jewish also?" So he says, maybe he's 18 years old. He says, "Well, my mom is." "Well, your mom is? That means you're Jewish." But I don't always believe people when they say that. So I said, are your grandparents Jewish?" He said, "Yeah." "Which ones?" "It's both my mom's parents." I said, "Can you tell me something Jewish? Anything Jewish you know?" "No, it doesn't really know." So anyways, I'm trying to find out, verify he's Jewish before putting the tefillin on him. And Mickey, he's like 90 years old at the time. He's like, "Kid, come here." So this kid comes and he leans in and he says, "Repeat after me." So the kid looks at him and says, and he says he's Jewish, right? He's Jewish. Anyways, he was Jewish. I believe he was Jewish. Although, that's the reality nowadays. A lot of people are Jewish and they weren't educated, and maybe their parents weren't educated, and their grandparents were barely educated, right? So, anyways, this is the word chet. It's a tough letter, but you can practice it. It's like clearing your throat. Our mnemonic is chet, like a chuppah. A chuppah is the wedding canopy, wedding canopy. So here we have a picture of it. We got a chet is shaped like a chuppah, right? And you can actually see it's shaped like a chuppah. Now, there's a very significant thing about chuppah. Typically, they say men are from Mars and women are from Venus, right? Men and women don't really get along. The only way to get them along is so there's something transcendent and they can transcend themselves. Then they can somewhat become new people and then they can get along and be married. And this is the significance of a chuppah. In order to have a chuppah, you have to transcend your logic. In order to get married, you got to transcend your logic, transcend yourself to connect to another person. That is what chesed, like a chuppah. A true marriage transcends nature and logic, and it has to be a soul commitment. And that's what a chuppah is. Chuppah is transcendent and it surrounds. So here we got our chet on our chuppah, right? So chet is a chuppah, right? Okay, great. Now we're going to do our next one. Our next letter here, oh, 1 second. Chet is also the numerical value of 8. Now, in Jewish mysticism, 8 is the number of infinity. In the world, a lot of things are in the number 7, like 7 days of the week. Now, you ever wonder, why do they make 10 days in a week, right? Or 2 days in a week, or 30 days in a week, or no weeks, right? Well, the reason is because people have been keeping weeks since the world was created. God created the world in 7 days, and that 7 cycle has been repeating itself again and again. And that's something everybody takes for granted. Now, 7 represents nature. How do we define infinite? Infinite is like unfathomable. So Jewish mysticism says 8 is the number of infinity. It's a 1 above nature. You just have to be a little bit higher than nature, and you're infinite. And that is actually why a child who gets circumcised is on which day? 8th day. He gets circumcised on the 8th day because when a Jewish boy gets circumcised, we're saying you have an infinite connection with God. So that is, chet is like a chuppah. If you don't remember any of these sparks of light, it'll be a little bit more boring for you, but don't worry about it. Okay. Now we got tet. Everyone say tet. Tet. So tet is shaped, look carefully, this is really important. Tet is shaped like a teapot, right? Everyone see the teapot? You have its handle and its spout, right? So you got its handle over here. This is the handle of the teapot. Tet is a teapot, and this is the spout. We're gonna hold this handle and pour our tea, right? So tet is a teapot. I'm sure Peter used to say tess, right? Probably, but don't worry, we'll get back to that after. All right, so tet is a teapot. All right, now tet is also the first letter of the word tov. Tov means good. Tov means good. Now, tet, the numerical value of tet is 9. Now, in Judaism, 9 is a significant number. That's how many months it is before a baby's born. Anyone ever been in the hospital when a baby's born? Not your own? It's terrible. The women are screaming. You think they're going to die. And you look at the doctor and you say, did you hear that? She says she's dying. And he says, oh, don't worry, she's having a baby, right? So tet teaches us that when there's suffering, it's always because suffering precedes birth. Tov, goodness, is sometimes you have to suffer, but it always perceives a birth after. It always brings to good, because birth is the greatest joy, right? So that is the significance of tet being 9. Tov is connected to the number 9 because 9 is how many months it takes before a baby's born, and even though it's uncomfortable, it's always worth it. You have a question?
No, but there is technically T, so that's a good way to remember the T.
That is a good way. So tet now. Tet is always confused with the following letter. So here we got a tet confused with the following letter. Now everyone could see a very big difference. They both have handles and spouts, right? But this one's not going to work, right? It's going to leak out the bottom. So this is not a tet. It is not a teapot. It will not work. I'm telling you. The tea will come out the bottom. The other one, you can pour it out of the spout. Okay, so that is tet. Now we're going to do our smallest letter. However, our smallest letter is perhaps in a certain way one of the biggest letters. And this letter is Yud. Yud. Everyone could say Yud. So Yud is small. Now the Jewish people are known to be a small nation, right? And the word in Yiddish for a Jew is a Yid. Yid is connected to Yud. So it's small like a Yid. Small like a Jew, small like a Yid. I want to share a very interesting story. Now, Yud, a lot of times, it's the first letter of Yisrael, Israel, right? Represents the Jewish people. They're small, but they're connected to the supernal Yud. Yud also represents God, right? It also represents God. So Yud is very, very special. Yud is very small, but it's also very transcendent. And that's the power that the Jewish people have, that we're very, very transcendent. So here we have also Yud is the first letter of God's name. And Yud represents God beyond this world, before he takes any shape or present. So a Jew is very small, but we're connected to God's name. And that's why we have such special Jewish energy and abilities. I want to mention something very, very interesting. So here, Yud alludes to God who is one and transcends all limits. A Jew is small, powerful like God's name. Now, the truth is, when I first gave this class, I kind of had issue. It says Yud is small like a Jew. Now, there is a very interesting story. There was a rabbi who passed away about a year ago named Rabbi Moshe Kotlarsky. He was director of development of Chabad. Anyways, the Rebbe would always send him on interesting missions. One day he goes to the middle of the night and he gets a call from the Rebbe's secretary. The Rebbe needs you to travel to Curacao. Curacao is one of the Caribbean islands. Rebbe needs you to travel to Curacao. Now, he was very, very faithful to the Rebbe. So he knew, he said, he didn't even ask what he needs to do there. He has to travel. The Rebbe is a seer, the Rebbe is a mystic. He has to travel there. Got up in the morning, went to the airport. Back in the olden days, you could buy your tickets at the gate. And he flew to Curacao. Anyways, he gets to Curacao. What is he supposed to do there? He doesn't know. He takes a taxi, says, take me to the synagogue. So he goes to the synagogue and he walks in, and there is a guy crying at the ark. In that time, the only school in Curacao was Catholic. And his son went to the Catholic school and didn't want to go because he was Jewish and he was having all a hard time. He didn't want to pray with them, but they wanted him to pray with them. It was a whole problem. And he was crying. He didn't know what to do with his son. So he's crying, and meanwhile, this Orthodox rabbi with a long beard walks in. And he says, "Oh my God, where do you? I literally asked God to send me a sign, like, and you walk into this island in Curacao." He couldn't believe it. So he told him his problem, and he said, "Look, why don't you send your son? He's, maybe 13 years old. Send him to New York to yeshiva. Send him to Jewish school. He'll come back. It's not so far. Send him." So they sent him to New York, and I actually met that guy. He eventually moved to Venezuela. The dad, his son lives in New York till today, Orthodox Jew. So afterwards, he sent a letter to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and the letter said, "Thank you for thinking." Now, I don't know, the Rebbe somehow knew, that this guy needed help. He said, "Thank you for thinking about a small Jew on a small island." So the Rebbe would take the letters, and then the Rebbe would write very quickly on them, and then his secretariat would edit them. So the Rebbe wrote back an editation, and it said, "There are small islands, but there are no small Jews." That was what he told them. There are small islands, but there are no small Jews. So, anyways, Yud is a Yid. Sometimes things that are small have the biggest packet, are the biggest, really. Okay. So now we're going to go review these letters. These are our second group of letters. Let's do it together quickly. Look at these letters. Vav. So that's Vav. Zayin. So we said again, Vav is a very skinny, right? Very thin. Zayin is zigzaggy. Chet is a chuppah, right? Tet is a teapot. And Yud is a Yid. So we're going to take a couple minutes, just like 3 minutes. If you can go through your cards, and I would review them. I just want you to review them. Again, it's like, I know that muscle memory, it's like repetitious, but that is the way our brains function nowadays. I don't think you can get AI to review for you. Now, if the mnemonic will help you remember the name of the letter, but it will also help you remember the sound, because the sound is actually underlined on each of those mnemonics. All right, let's continue on. Just a couple more letters tonight, and then we'll review all of them. Any questions so far? All right, well, you guys are doing great. Okay, so now we're going to go to our next letter. Our next letter is card number 13. This letter is called Kaf. Kaf. Now, Kaf also has a twin, right? Kaf also has a twin. Kaf, and its twin is Chaf, right? So there's Kaf and Chaf. Now, I want to tell you a little story about them. Can anyone tell me the difference between these two letters? No, Bet has a button. Kaf has a cough drop. All right? Kaf has a cough drop. So everyone sees the cough drop. Kaf has a cough drop. So when it has its cough drop, it makes the K sound. Now, anyone here ever have a cough? So what do you sound like if you don't take a cough drop? Cough, right? Kaf has to clear its throat because he doesn't have a cough drop. So you have Kaf has a cough drop, and Kaf does not have a cough drop. So therefore, he doesn't take it, and therefore he sounds hoarse, right? He sounds like a. So we have Kaf and Chaf. Now, Chaf and Chet are the same sound. They are the same sound. That's something confusing. There are letters that have the same sound, but nevertheless, they have different meaning. Yeah, they have different meaning. So here we have Kaf as a cough drop. Everyone see the cough drop over there? I think this is the kosher type. And Chaf has no cough drop, so it sounds hoarse, like, right? Kaf and Chaf. Okay. Now, Kaf in Hebrew actually means bent. Kaf means bent. And actually, Kaf also means a spoon. So this is a double Kaf, the bent spoon, right? Kaf means spoon, and it also means palm of your hand, right? Because you bend the palm of your hand to receive. So Kaf means bent. Kaf signifies bending yourself for God. When you want to connect to God and you acknowledge God, you got to bend yourself, become subservient to accept God's sovereignty. So this is bending, this is humility, and it's valued by God very, very much. And it's traditionally more valued than all the other gifts they gave in the temple in Jerusalem was submission, humility to God. And that's the word kaf. Kaf means to bend. So again, kaf has a cough drop. Kaf does not have a cough drop. It makes a ch sound. And kaf means bent. Kaf means bent, literally means bent. Okay, let's go on. Now we're going to go to the last couple letters of tonight. Now, yes.
So the first one, and the second one is.
Yeah, ka and cha. Ka. The cough drop makes it say ka. Ka. Yeah. Now it's notable. Earlier we compared this to the letter bet, but we can clearly see now that it is not a bet because it doesn't have a balcony, right? It doesn't have a balcony. Everyone remember the bet has a balcony sticking out? That was our second letter. It doesn't have a balcony. So when it doesn't have a balcony, that makes it a kaf and a chaf. If it has a cough drop, it's kaf. If it doesn't have a cough drop, it's chaf. All right, here's our bent chaf. All right, now we're going to introduce, there's a couple letters which are called final letters. There are certain letters which are same letter, but when they're at the end of the word, they look different. They look different. So now we're going to introduce the final kaf and the final chaf, right? Now, good luck, final kaf with that cough drop, right? It's going to fall down. But there's final kaf, and they make the same sound, but this is how they look when they are at the end of a word. Now, here it says the kaf and chaf, they refuse to be the last letter in the word. And therefore, they had to straighten them out, unfold them, and dig them in, right? So that's what happened to this kaf and chaf. So we got kaf and chaf. Kaf has a cough drop, no balcony. Chaf has no cough drops, makes a ch sound. And then we have the version that we hammer into the end of the word. We have final kaf and final chaf. Now, when you look at these letters at the end of the word, you'll see they are longer than all the other letters. They're longer than all the other letters. Okay, now we're going to do our last letter for tonight. And this is our longest letter. This is called Lamed. Lamed. Lamed is lanky ladder. Lamed is a lanky ladder, right? Lamed is the biggest letter, and it's a lanky ladder. Now, it's the tallest letter, And actually, lamed is kind of made out of two letters if you zoom out. Two letters that we introduced today. Now, lamed literally means, in Hebrew, lamed means to teach or to learn. The word lamed means to teach or to learn. And that's lamed. Now, lamed is made out of two letters. You have a chaf and a vav, and they come together. See that graphic? Let's watch it again. Chaf and a vav. Everyone saw that? And that creates the lamed. Chaf and a vav, right? They create a lamed. Now, the numerical value of chaf and vav is 26. 26 is the numerical value of God's name. 26 is the numerical value of God's name. So what God wants us to teach, we said lamed means to teach and to learn, is we want lamed, and lamed is the tallest letter. God wants us to make his greatness the center point of our life. That's what we teach and that's what we learn. And it's the biggest letter in our life, right? The biggest letter is a chaf and a vav, which come together and make a lanky lamed. So we got lanky lamed, and that is all the letters we're going to learn for today. So now we're going to review them. And we're going to go through them, we'll review them, and then we'll finish up for today. So let's go. If we can all call out our first letter here. Aleph. So Aleph is silent, right? Now we got our next letter. Bet, right? So Bet has a button. It also has a balcony. Now this one here, Vet. Vet doesn't have a button, but it does have a balcony, right? Okay, that was a corny joke. Okay. Now we have our next one. Gimel. Now, how do we remember what a gimel is? Gimel is glamorous. It has a high yield. Now we have Dalet. Dalet's a hammer and makes a dent. Hey. Hey, we said his foot is broken. Hey, his foot is broken. Then we got Vav. Vav is very skinny, very thin. Now we have our Zion. Zigzaggy Zion, right? Zigzaggy Zion. Now we have our next one is Chet. Chet. Chet is a chuppah. Chet is a chuppah. Chet is a chuppah, right? And we said the chuppah surrounds the bride and groom. Now we have our next one. Tet. Tet is a teapot, right? It's a t sound. Tet is a teapot. Not to be confused with the other letter, which looks similar, which has a handle and a spout, but it has a leak in the bottom. So Tet is a teapot, has a handle and a spout. Now our next one is Yud. Yud is the smallest letter. It represents a Yid and God. Kaf. Kaf has a cough drop. Kaf has a cough drop, remember? And his twin brother does not take that cough drop, and therefore he's Kaf, right? So we got Kaf and Chaf. Kaf has a cough drop, and Chaf has a no cough drop, and therefore his voice is hoarse. Then we have a final Chaf, and we don't have final Kaf on this one. Final Kaf is very rare. This one just has the one of the finals. And then our final letter, which is a lanky ladder, is Lamed, right? So those are our letters. Now, if you want to take another minute, go through yourself, and then we'll finish for today. Yes, and God willing, at the end, we'll be able to read that paragraph in the middle. Yeah, believe it or not. Yeah, I can't stress the muscle memory is such an important thing in this. To repeat it again every day, even for a few minutes, even if it doesn't feel like you're lifting heavy weights, just doing it again and again makes it familiar, and at the end you'll know this. So let's just go through. If you want to go through, review the letters on your own. If anyone has any questions, please ask me. I'll put this back up here.
Yeah, right. You were, yeah. I wonder, I just want to have lots of the, sometimes the last couple of evenings that I find them. That's what I think of. Oh, good point.
Last of a word, yeah. All right, well, yeah, so anyone have any questions or anything? Please review, even if you know it, review it, so we don't have to come back, a lot of times it's like, there's this one card in there, which looks like this. There's this card here. So now this card here, if you have this card in your pocket, one second, let me find it. There's got to be a faster way of doing this. There is, but okay. If you have this card in your pocket, you can basically just, all the letters in your pocket, right? However, if you don't, if you repeat it, you will remember it. And as time goes on, a lot of times we're like, oh, I can hack it. I did it in 1 minute. We end up holding like big loads of stuff we need to remember. And then later on in 3 weeks from now, we're gonna, the schedule is basically gonna be, today we did until here, from here until here. Next week, if I recall correctly, we're gonna do until here. The week after, we're gonna do these last 4. They cause a lot of problems. We're gonna do these last 4 and the vowels. And then we are going to learn how to read them, read the letters. And then by the end, if you're able to practice, and even if you miss a few days, don't give up, just jump in. If you need a reminder, or if there's someone else in your home, it's, you can go and sit them down, or a friend, and say, hey, I'm going to go over this with you. So you make sure you get it done. And God willing, in a few weeks, we'll all be ready to read Hebrew for the high holidays. Right? All right. Any questions? Yes. Name of the app. The name of the app is named after this course, but let me give you the exact name. Read it in Hebrew. Let's see. Read it in Hebrew from the Jewish Learning Institute.
Spell it out, or is it R?
Yeah, if you want, I can send it to anyone who wants. Does anyone want me to send it to them? Okay, so let me just see if I have your number. What? On mine, it's $199. It could be iPhone, it's more expensive, or I don't know. But it could be, yeah, it's a really good app. It doesn't multitask for you. You still got to do it yourself. But let me see if I can find this. You found it? All right, well, perfect. Well, thank you very much for coming. And God willing, we'll get through this easily and happily. How does it compare to Ulpan? Oh yeah, we're gonna. Yeah. What's nice about this is it breaks it down so much that it's like everything that we